The last book of the Old Testament is the Book of Malachi. And that's where I want us to turn this evening, to chapter 3 and verse 7. Malachi chapter 3 and verse 7. And in that passage, we find these thoughts. Even from the days of your fathers, you're gone away from mine ordinances, and have kept not them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. But ye said, Wherein shall we return? This is the way that the book of Malachi is really written. It's a little different than most of the other prophets. What happens in this book that's written sometime between probably about 445 to 422 BC is that the prophet Malachi is sent to the people of Israel, like other prophets, to call them back to God. They had gone away from him once more. But what happens is God, through Malachi, addresses the people of Israel. And he tells them what they have done. And then you find their response. They really question God. And what they say basically is, what do you mean? When did we ever do anything like that? For instance, in chapter 1 and verse 2, God says, I have loved Jacob. And they respond by saying, Wherein hast thou loved us? What do you mean you loved us? They'd forgotten. God chose Jacob over Esau. Could have had the Esauites instead of the Israelites, but he chose for the promise to go through Israel, through Jacob. And he watched over them. He blessed them. He sustained them. But they had forgotten. In verse 6, they said, In what way have we despised thy name? God explains, it's because you've offered unto me animals that are blind, that are lame, animals that you were going to get rid of anyway, when you have a male lamb in your flock. And this goes on throughout the whole book. He talks to the Levites, the priest, and says that they were guilty of despising him. And they say, wherefore? Or how? Well, they were putting away the wives of their youth. And they were divorcing them and marrying other women. God says, that's not what I want at all. I hate divorce. Putting away, he says. In fact, it goes on to where you get to in chapter 3 and verse 13, and they say, what have we spoken against you? And what they had said was that it's really useless to serve the Lord. It doesn't bring any benefit at all. And so God challenges them. And in the verse that we read to start with, there in chapter 3 and verse 7, God pleads with them, return to me, and I will return to you. Let there be this restoration, this reconciliation. Come to me, return to me, and I will return to you. And they said, wherein shall we return to you? What do you mean? You see, they didn't understand that they had left. They didn't know that their relationship with God was severed because of their sins. There are a lot of folks in our world that are in that same kind of position. God is pleading for them to come to him. And really their response is, what do you mean? How can we come? We never left you. They don't understand that without Christ we're separated from the Lord. And so I want you to think about this request that God gives, this plea that he gives here in Malachi chapter 3 and verse 7. Return to me, and I will return to you. Folks, if you're away from God, that's what God is saying to us today through his word. return to me. And if you've never obeyed the gospel, you need to take that step so that you can be reconciled to God through Christ. So my friend, if tonight you need to be immersed in water for the forgiveness of your sins, or if you need to be restored back to that right relationship, listen to the words that God gave to Israel those many years ago. Return to me, and I will return to you. If you need to respond to the invitation, come now, as together we stand and sing.